Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the 30 Days of Spectre. My name's Tom Sears and I'm joined by my good buddy Chris Wright. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Now today, as it's episode 007, we are going to be talking about Agent 007 himself, James Bond, and maybe Daniel's James Bond in this episode. We're going to be looking at kind of, how different he is compared to his other movies, that kind of thing, how he's progressed since Casino, all those kinds of things. Are you excited?
How can you not be? I mean, it's Danny Boy and he's living the dream. Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Now, it must be said that obviously we're at the 7th of November now, so the film would have come out in America last night. So that's very exciting. Welcome aboard to our brothers from Langley who will have joined in the 30 Days of Spectre hopefully by now.
They're all in the naughty door now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all in the naughty door. Everyone's in the naughty door apart from the poor Japanese and the Australians. Who else is left over?
I think, the Southeast Asia sort of area. Poor peeps.
Not long now, eh? So everyone's in. Hopefully everyone would have rushed home from Spectre all across America and batch downloaded the 30 Days of Spectre so far into their phones and iPods and have caught up already, because that's what I would do. Let's face it, that would be my course of action. So what must be mentioned is these abysmal US reviews that have come out over the last few days. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Well, especially when you compare that when it came out here, that pretty much the majority of British reviews were overwhelmingly positive, weren't they?
Yeah.
Now, initially, I wasn't sure whether it was just, in terms of clickbait, people trying to get numbers up. Oh, yeah, it's crap. Come and read my sort of thing. But the sheer number of it is quite surprising, really. It's shocking. So
it is positively shocking because, the British reviews were all, like you said, overwhelmingly positive, 4 and 5 stars across the board. Everyone seemed to love it. And then it must be said as well, all the fans seem to be, well, not all, that's obviously wrong, but like generally speaking, a lot of the fans, a huge amount, were overwhelmingly positive after the film came out. And there seems to have been this little change of opinion over the last few days. I don't know whether it's the second and third viewings for a lot of people, and really the tide has turned with an alarming number of fans who are now saying that they don't like it. So that's a funny one, isn't it? That is a really funny one, because for me, every time I watch this film, I love it more and more. I've done it 4 times now, and it only gets better for me. The more I watch it, the more I bloody love it.
Well, I'm the same, because every time I've seen it, the same as you, I've seen it 4 times, and every time I watch it, I pick up something new from it. I'm like, oh, I didn't see that last time. Yeah. But the good stuff just stays. It doesn't deteriorate. It is solid, and it's great. And I could happily watch it again. Well, I obviously will, but it is a solid film. Now, normally for me, if my opinion changes, it will generally be maybe I'm completely caught off guard when I first see something like Quantum, for instance, and I came out and I'm not sure, but then it slowly grows on me and stuff like that. I've never had an opinion of any film, let alone a Bond film, where I've thought, oh my God, I loved it. And then 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, thought, oh, actually, I don't like it. And that's a very strange way round for it to happen, I think.
That must be said. That's the same for me as well. Like, so far, I went to see Casino, like I've often said. First time I was like, this is so different. I don't know what to make of it. Went home, thought about it, came back, watched it again. And then that second viewing was like, holy shit, I think this might be the best one ever. That was my Casino experience. Quantum, I saw and I was disappointed. I was like, it wasn't quite what I was looking for. And then over time, it's gradually, slowly, very slow burner, that one. And it's only very recently, within the last few weeks, has started to twig. And I think Spectre has done it a million favours, actually. And it's jumped up for me big time. Skyfall, again, I was like, that was okay. It wasn't my favourite Bond film by any means, but, it was all right. And again, I was a bit disappointed. Spectre, I was glued from start to finish. And it made me feel like I was 12 years old again. And I don't remember loving a Bond film that much straight away since I was like 13 when GoldenEye came out. And like that, like I've often said, that was like the turnkey moment for me that was like, whoa, I really love this, I loved every second of it. And I just don't get the negativity about it.
What do you think the reason is then?
Well, it must be said, there is a fella who wrote this article on Forbes.com who basically the headline of the review was Spectre is the worst James Bond movie in the last 30 years. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, fuck off, you know. So I click it and I have a read, and he's just basically saying that the fact that Bond has more humor is a bad thing, and the fact that it's more of a classic style Bond film is a step backwards. And the comment that did it for me is somewhere in the middle. He says, because we all know what the worst Bond film of the last 30 years is. Let's face it. We all know what that film is. And in the middle, he says, even Die Another Day, at least that tried to mess with the formula a little bit, as if that is more of a virtuous film than Spectre is. Now, okay, I get it. I get the whole Blofeld brotherly thing, right? Because that is an old-fashioned thing, you know, the hero versus the villain, and it turns out they are related in some way. Darth Vader, for example, did that very well back in the day. Yeah. It's been done a lot, of course. Did it bother me? No. And I'll tell you why. Because it's not like they're blood relations. It's not like Blofeld or Oberhauser is actually Bond's brother. The story goes they spent 2 weekends together, and, you know, 2 winters, sorry, 2 weekends.
That sounds a bit dirty.
It does, doesn't it all? Bond and Blofeld, eh? 2 winters together, learning to ski and all that stuff. And his dad said, treat him like a brother. And that was the whole relationship. And I know, obviously, Blofeld mentions brothers a couple of times. But to me, they're not. They're just, that's just the style of relationship they had for 2 winters. If they'd have wheeled him out as a blood relation, I'd have been like, oh, man, that's no, that's not right. How that was done, I think, just worked for me. I just didn't, I know a lot of people were like, bollocks, it's ruined the whole film. For me, it didn't bother me one bit. How did you feel?
Well, they're not brothers. That's the thing. Yeah. If they're not like, why are some people saying, oh, but they're brothers? What's that about? They're not, are they? Like you just said, it clearly, they basically just think of them as, they weren't even mates, were they? They just happened to be living together for a couple of months over 2 years. And, you know, the whole relationship thing is not, it doesn't matter whatsoever. Yeah. I suppose you could say, oh, but they were friends when they were young, or, you know, living together. But, you know, there's some leeway in that, and it's okay. But if it had been, they were real brothers, I'd understand it completely. But obviously they weren't, and I don't know, it's a bit of a backlash over nothing, I think, really. Yeah,
no, absolutely. That's what I think. And I've been obviously cruising some of the Bond forums and stuff, and checking out Reddit and all that kind of stuff. And more people are posting how they don't like the film. There really is a big negative kind of backlash that seems to have been coming out over the last sort of probably week or so, basically, that it's just kind of gradually been coming through. Now, when I read the criticisms and the reviews, I feel like you could just put them in front of any Bond film and it would be the same thing. So they're saying, you know, it's too formulaic, or it's like, you know, it's too humorous, or it's for, like, you know, it's a step backwards and all that kind of stuff. And all of those criticisms, when you actually read the reviews, are just like, well, you could say that about Goldfinger, you could say that about Spy Who Loved Me, you could say it about GoldenEye, you could say it about any of them. You know, and it's a lot of people are saying, oh, there's too many plot holes. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. There are plot holes in every single Bond film. Can you make a bowler hat with a metal rim that can decapitate a statue? No.
I've tried it.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. You know, that's not real. You have to suspend your disbelief a little bit, you know. There's so many of them. I mean, this sort of Skyfall, with the reviewers and critics, seems to be regarded as this like untouchable Bond film, in a sense that it was like this huge marker for the whole series. And of course it is, in the sense that it did very well in the box office. But let's just look at that for a minute. You know, the dude gets shot 3 or 4 times in the pre-title sequence and just keeps coming. And then Moneypenny shoots him with like a high-powered sniper rifle off of a moving train, off of a massive bridge, into a fast-flowing river, down a waterfall. And we're just supposed to expect that he just swims out and sorts himself out and he's all right. You know, to me, that's like, okay, that's a fucking plot hole right there. You know, you didn't have to push it that far. And Silver's entire plan about getting caught just to escape again and lining up that tube train so it would land exactly where Bond was standing.
At the exact time.
Like, you know, it's like there's so many of them in all of the Bond films that it's just, to say that ruins this film is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in all my life. What are your thoughts?
well, the whole thing about it's too much like a Bond film. You know, it's too formulaic. Well, okay, I love what they've done in the past few films in terms of, you know, they have tried to alter the formula, not a lot, but in terms of story, you know, bringing in a bit of a character arc and emotion, and that's great and that's brilliant. But, you know, to say something is too formulaic or too much of a Bond film when it is a Bond film is completely ludicrous, because the fact is, it you know, I think this film, it was definitely made with diehard fans in thought, you know, in terms of the amount of nods that we've got. You know, it is classic Bond, but that's not a bad thing, is it?
Yeah, I mean, know. That's my argument. You know, it's not a bad thing. That's why we love Bond, because of those classic things. The moment Connery unzips his wetsuit or his dry suit at the beginning of Goldfinger, and he has a perfectly pressed dinner jacket on underneath with the carnation. I mean, you would have to give the amount I had to kind of press my suit for the premiere. You would have to give that a run over with an iron and a steamer to look that good immediately straight out the gate. Those moments are amazing. You know, there's a plot hole in Goldfinger, obviously. You know, why bother strapping him to a table and cutting him with a laser? You would just shoot him in the face. Plot hole, you know. But then if you're just going to live like that, you're spoiling the whole fucking thing by just being so worried about that if you'd have worried about that, you'd have missed out on one of the most iconic scenes in all of cinema history. You'd have just shot Bond in the head, the film would have ended, game over. Instead, you strap him on the table, laser going up between his legs. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. We'd have missed out on all of that if we'd have worried about plot holes, right? So what's the fucking problem at the end of the day? Now, I was on Reddit earlier, and basically some poor soul over in the States was saying, oh my God, I'm really worried about seeing this film. I've seen some of the reviews and the headlines, and I'm terrified to go and see it now in case it's awful. So I jumped on there and I said, don't worry about it. I absolutely love this film. The bad US reviews don't seem to make any sense to me whatsoever. Just go and enjoy it. Don't worry about it. It's brilliant. I love it. It's good stuff. And then another fella pops up who is user Leon Protos, who's over there on the James Bond subreddit. And he said, hey, Chris, I love the podcast, which was nice. There you go.
Thanks, Leon.
He says, yeah, reading the reviews I've seen so far, it seems as though I could have taken out the word Spectre and replaced it with Goldfinger, Thunderball, or The Spy Who Loved Me, and the arguments would still apply. Yet those are all regarded as classic Bond. Absolutely. I think it's just critics and audiences expecting more subversive Bond a la Casino Royale and Skyfall and getting classic Bond instead. Most common complaints I see are it's not Skyfall or it's not Casino Royale, and the most laughable I think is it's too much like a James Bond movie. Perish the thought. And I feel like that sums it up perfectly. It's like a lot of these reviews are saying this is a step back, and like it set back the Bond series by 20 years or something stupid like that. But it's like, hold on a minute. This is the very thing we've all loved about Bond from the very start, you know? There is the argument, okay, that you've got Fleming's Bond, the book Bond, and then the film Bond, right?
Yeah.
And you look at Timothy Dalton, for example, and that's, you know, very close to the Fleming Bond, you know, and the Daniel films so far have been that kind of vibe as well. This one is a bit of a turn. This is more like the classic screen Bond than the, you know, the cold sort of Fleming Bond. Though for me, I feel it's more of a mixture of the two, really, in this one. And I feel like, well, really, they're both equally valid, and there's nothing wrong with either of them. Sometimes it's like we were saying the other day about which actor you'll put on depending on what mood you're in. Sometimes you want the cold, hard Ian Fleming thriller. Sometimes you want a bit more fun. And to be honest with you, the classic film Bond is infinitely cooler than the book Bond. Do you know what I mean? Like the swagger that Connery has in Goldfinger is just, you don't beat that, you know, and you don't get that in the books, do you? You get the, you know, the sort of the colder and harder edge and stuff. Not that I don't like it. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but for me, like that Connery thing is just so brilliant, and we haven't had it for ages. So why not have it, you know?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's nonsense. It'll be interesting to see how it goes, like over a few weeks, a month or whatever over there, because I don't know. I think some people will be loving it, the fact that it is being negged so much, because, you know, like you said, some people just like to have a negative view on things. But okay, swing it the other way. When we came out of Quantum, okay, we weren't happy, and we were pretty down on it for a while, weren't we? And like you said, it's been a slow burner to come back. So you've got to respect that some people might be watching this, having similar thoughts to we did when we first watched Quantum, and that's fair enough. But it's so strange when pretty much everything that we wanted, everything that we sort of have mentioned in previous podcasts about what we want out of Bond, out of Spectre, we pretty much got, literally nail on the head, and to get that is unspoken of, it's unheard of, isn't it? It's beyond our sort of dreams in terms of, think how, it could have been a complete turkey, man. And it wasn't. It was absolutely brilliant. So I think it's just a case of see what happens with it over there. But one thing's for sure, Danny Boy was awesome in it, and I think we should have a little chat about Danny Boy. What do you think?
Absolutely, we totally should. I think what it is like Matey said in the Reddit comment, I think there's just, if you were expecting more of Skyfall, you're going to be disappointed with this film, But at the end of the day, it's like it just boils down to a matter of taste, in the sense that some people might really be into, we've got some JBR listeners who Timothy Dalton is their favorite Bond, and he's Ian Fleming's James Bond, and that's fine. Perfectly valid opinion. That's great. Some people love Roger Moore's Bond, and he's their number one. One person we know loves George, for example. And that's fine. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that there is something for everyone in there. And for people to go in and be like, well, I was hoping for more of a Skyfall or a Casino, getting Spectre instead. What
would more of a Skyfall film have been?
I guess Bond being a bit more brooding. I guess less sort of action. I don't know.
It's true.
I don't know. But and it's like, if you wanted if you wanted a License to Kill style movie this time, you didn't get it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You got more of the classic Bond, and that's okay. But then to go and say the film is shit because it wasn't quite what you were expecting, I guess it's a similar thing to the whole Sam Smith thing. It's not what you expected. Doesn't mean it's shit. It's just not quite what you were after. And that, for me, was my Skyfall experience. It was like, I'm not saying the film's shit. It was just, it wasn't really what I wanted. And that's that. So to say that it's the worst Bond film in 30 years just makes me want to go and, jump out the window naked.
Again.
That's what I do when I get pissed off, Chris. You know that.
But the other way to look at it as well is that, the whole fact that Bond is stayed as long as it has and it's kept going is that it has changed. And like we've said before, if you keep going down the same route, eventually it will die. And the fact that it does, we should be applauding the fact that it's changed to bring the classic back. And it will probably do one or two films along that line, and then it will change again. And that's how that's the only way it can live and survive. And that's what will happen for sure.
So let's stop hating on the haters, and let's start having our usual JBR hippie loving and join hands around the world and talk about this film. Or Daniel's Bond in this film. So I suppose the first thing we should mention is Daniel Craig's portrayal of James Bond in Spectre. How do you feel about it?
Well, I'm obviously a big fan. I think the way that you can look at it, it's definitely contrasted with some of his other films that we've seen so far, some of Craig's other Bonds. So, without a doubt, the humour is the thing that hits me more than anything. It's a lighter-hearted Bond, this. It's someone that can... he's still in danger. He's still in tricky situations. There's still a torture scene, which is, easily comparable to like some of the nastiest stuff that we've seen so far. But he can still have a bit of a smile and a joke along the way with some of it. And it's nice to see. And that's obviously, I think, in terms of Daniel's portrayal, the biggest difference that we've had compared to the previous three. Look, in Quantum, he was basically Jason Bourne, wasn't he? He was just like a man on a mission of revenge, a killing machine, basically, in Quantum. That's pretty much all he was. Casino Royale, he was coming to the fore, Casino Royale, he kind of had a bit of everything, but it was introducing the characters, so he had that aspect as well. And then Skyfall, I don't see... a huge amount of difference in the Skyfall portrayal to this one, apart from the story around him, which is in Skyfall, he's meant to be old. They tried a bit of humour and it didn't work. This one, the age isn't counted. They tried a bit of humour and it did work. But everything else around it, I think, is quite reasonably similar to a certain extent. But
yeah,
what do you think?
I think, okay, so going back to Casino, for example, you had a very dark, brooding James Bond, didn't you? You know, you started off with a little bit of humour, you know, the playful conversation on the train with Vesper, for example. You know, the last hand nearly killed me. It's one of my favourite lines in the entire series. Brilliant. And then obviously as the film ends, you've got a sort of Majesty style ending where, you know, the girl he loves dies and then it's very cold-hearted Bond after that and very dark. Quantum, even darker, man out on a mission, kind of very kind of ruthless and stuff like that killing of Edmund Slate, for example, and just watching him bleed out. Well, he doesn't even watch him bleed out, does he? He's kind of just like looking over, just waiting for the man to die, things like that. Very dark in that respect. And then obviously Skyfall was the first time, and they mentioned it, didn't they, before the film came out? They're like, we're going to bring in some of those classic things again. You know, Moneypenny's going to show up. Well, they didn't say that, did they? They kept that secret. But Q's going to show up. You know, and there's a few more jokes. And, you know, he jumps on the back of the tube train. He's in a rush to get home, or whatever the line is. Yeah. You know, that's bringing back some of those old school things. For me, the humour in Skyfall felt quite forced, you know, fell into some deep water. I've said this many times. Fell into some deep water. A scene with the Komodo dragon, you know, circle of life, and walks off. I'm just like, I just don't feel he pulls it off very well. And as I said before, that was a big worry of mine in this movie. This time, I feel like it just gels perfectly, and every quip and thing that comes out of his mouth, every bit of flippancy has that. He just nails it, and I think it's brilliant. And for me, this is the journey we were always on, in the sense that Casino was becoming Bond. And then I think I remember Mark Forster saying that he put the gun barrel at the end to say, okay, he's Bond now. Like that was the signal that he's finally become Bond at the end of Quantum. Yeah. And then that weird thing about Skyfall, like we said, of him being too old and past it, was just really strange to sort of put that in, because that's not mentioned at all again this time. But I feel like Spectre is the first time we've seen the complete Bond as we've always known him. You know, this could be the same Bond that was in Goldfinger or Thunderball or, you know, Live and Let Die, for example. And you've got the Bond who picks up Vesper Lynd's interrogation tape and he thinks about it for a second, then just puts the thing back down. He's not going to watch it. He's shut off that part of his heart and he's not going to reopen it.
Was that because they didn't have a VHS recorder because it's so old? Maybe
Eva Green asked for too much money. Who knows? But yeah, so I feel like that was the journey we were always on, and this is just a natural part of that journey. So here's a question then: do you think, like, when you look at Connery from Dr. No to say Diamonds Are Forever, or Roger from Live and Let Die through to View to Kill, do you think Daniel's Bond has evolved in the same, like, do you think, sorry, those older Bonds, do you think they evolved in their character of Bond, or do you think they trotted out more or less the same kind of thing every time? Because Daniel has definitely evolved here. Did the other actors?
So that is an incredibly good question. Okay, let's start with Connery. In terms of, okay, so how, not physically, because that's nothing to do with it, but in terms of the Dr. No Connery through to the Diamonds Are Forever. I mean, the Dr. No, you still got a bit of early career stuff in terms of, you know, he's not quite the proper Bond in that film. I don't think. From Russia with Love onwards, I think from Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, you only have twice in terms of character. They're all, even Diamonds maybe, I don't think he's changed a lot. You know, he's still playing it the same sort of way, isn't he? I can't imagine.
There's that whole thing, isn't there, of like, obviously the tone of Diamonds is way different to Dr. No.
Yeah.
But if you look at, say, you know, there's that scene with M at the beginning where M's reeling off the different diamonds and how many carats rough they are, and you can see Bond's not listening, and then M's like, you're not even listening, and then he can reel it off instantly because he already knows. Like, we've had those kind of scenes before. Like, that reminds me of Goldfinger, for example, when they're at the Bank of England and he's like indifferently blended with an overdose of Bomboir and all that kind of stuff. That's the same thing for me, you know, that's the same and M's like, there is no year for Sherry 007. And, you know, he already knows everything. So for me, I feel like Connery's Bond, and Sean said that himself, didn't he? He was like, it doesn't tax you as an actor because it's just dishing up the same thing every time. Yeah. And I feel like that's more or less right. He played, you know, obviously Dr. No and From Russia are a little bit different. They're a bit more grounded than the other movies. But yeah, I feel like that is the same kind of guy. What do you think? Would you agree with that statement?
No, with Sean, I'd say definitely. I think Roger's slightly different because his Bond kind of changes, doesn't he? Because it sort of starts, you know, reasonably cruel in certain respects for Live and Let Die and Man with the Golden Gun. Then it gets lighter and lighter. Then it goes really dark to us. Well, not really dark, but for Roger, really dark. You know, with For Your Eyes Only, and then it starts to get back up the sort of humour, light-hearted scale. So with Roger, it's very much a roller coaster, I think, in terms of his Bond. He didn't have you wouldn't say it's a character arc as such. You just say his films had different temperaments to them, I suppose. Which is slightly different. Timmy's obviously stayed the same. Pierce, I don't know. I think he pretty much would have played his Bond the same throughout. What do you think?
I would say the same as well. I think obviously his films got gradually more crazy, but in terms of the character he was playing and the way he portrayed Bond, I would say there's not much difference in, you know, The World Is Not Enough to GoldenEye to, you know, GoldenEye's a more grounded film for sure, but in terms of actually who he is and how he's playing the character, I would say it's more or less the same. So really, I have a feeling that Daniel is really sort of the only Bond who has actually sort of evolved that performance. They've taken it from a dark and gritty beginning and gradually evolved him into what we see in Spectre, into the classic character of Bond we've always known, kind of thing. So I suppose that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because again, obviously Timmy was a sort of a darker kind of character as well, big revenge time in License to Kill. And there's always been the hints of, you know, he was married once and all that kind of stuff. And even Roger at Tracy's grave in For Your Eyes Only. And I think with this one, with Daniel, this is the only time we've really seen so much of that past of what makes him Bond. You know, there's been so much mention of his parents and stuff. And obviously you see the family home in Skyfall. None of the other actors had that to play with at all. Whereas Daniel has, which is quite an important distinction, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's helped. Obviously, they were going for that in terms of a storyline with the character arc and emotion for the character. I mean, that's without a doubt that's contributed to sort of Daniel's portrayal. But now it does seem to be that it has kind of, you know, the darker stages are not so much there. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, how they play out in the next one, if he is in the next one, which he will be. But
he will be.
Yeah, without a doubt. That would be interesting, but I think it would be more along the lines of Spectre than any of the previous ones, I'd imagine anyway.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how they play it, whether they go even more into the fantastic, stick along the same sort of lines as Spectre, or even pull it back down, like from Moonraker to For Your Eyes Only. Maybe they go the other way with it. You just don't know. And I don't know what would influence it going either way. In the sense that, you know, if, you know, a film comes out and there's like a popular public opinion about it, and, you know, for example, Die Another Day to Casino is a perfect example. They're like, you know, this film went way too far, we need to bring this back down to earth and all the rest of it. Whether the public opinion of Spectre would have any bearing on what Bond 25 would be.
Well, that's incredibly interesting, because Daniel and Sam, and obviously the writers, made a conscious decision to make it more lighthearted, to make it more of a classic Bond. You know, they brought these elements in on purpose. Now, if it was just based solely on the UK, they'll be like, wait, we're on the money here. Everyone's on board. This is brilliant. We'll do another one like the same. If the American sort of negative press remains for a long period of time, they might be like, well, hang on a minute. It's worked in this territory, but these guys don't like that sort of style at all. What do we do? And I mean, without a doubt, public opinion has to affect the way they think about Bond. Sometimes it's ignored, like, because even though, Die Another Day made a lot of money, didn't it? It made a huge amount of money, but they did sort of realise, okay, it's gone too far. Obviously, some people have had the naysayers about it, but they made that decision. But it'll be interesting to see how long, you know, what the overall critical sort of feedback is globally once you know it's been out for a couple of months.
I do feel on some levels, just going back to the review things briefly, I do feel on some level you simply can't win, in the sense that if they had have cranked out Skyfall 2, the critics would have immediately said, oh, it's more of the same. They've tried to make Skyfall, it's not as good as Skyfall. And it would have been the same thing. I feel like they're almost, in following any huge success like that, is almost like a shot in the balls, because there's always going to be those people who just say it's not as good as that last one. So you can't win, I guess, on some level. But if Bond 25 is more along the lines of Spectre, I'll be a happy man. I bloody loved it, as I've made abundantly clear in this episode, I think. Anyway, so talking about those kind of classic Bond tropes, those classic sort of aspects to his character, there are, and I mean, I know you've got super eagle eyes on this movie when you've seen it. There's a lot of things you don't pick up on the first time or the second time, indeed even the third time, but they just kind of like come out and you're like, that's a nice little touch. I hadn't thought of that. The sofa being the nod to You Only Live Twice, for example, is a great example of that. Now, you made a point a while back about how there's the scene, obviously, where they're waiting to be picked up to go to Blofeld's base, and the Rolls Royce sort of comes out through the desert, and Bond instantly knows what car it is down to the year. Yeah. And that, to me, is like a callback to the whole thing of Bond knowing all about the diamonds and knowing all about the sherry and the Bond bar and all that kind of stuff, you know? We haven't had one of those scenes where Bond fucking just reels off all these facts that he knows about everything in a while. And I feel like that is a little kind of hint of that side of things.
100%. That's exactly it. That is a classic moment, because, you know, I don't remember, Daniel hasn't done that in any of his Bonds yet, has he? I don't think.
Not that I can recall.
At least not in that sort of style. But he was like, 1958 Rolls Royce Silver Wraith, and he like just knew it like that. And again, that was actually quite a really nice nod, because that's the same Rolls that Karen Bay has in From Russia with Love. The year, I think, is different, but, you know, so that's a nice little nod there. I think M had one in the novel Dr. No as well, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But no, there's lots of little classic stuff like that. I think I love the way, okay, you know, in the Roger films, particularly, like, you know, straight away when he's with Miss Anders, or when he, you know, basically in pretty much every film, Roger always snogs a bird to try and get information. He's like, I just need some information. And if he doesn't get it, it's like, smooch, smooch, smooch. Oh, by the way, you know, where is, you know, Francisco Scaramanga live, or something like that. Yeah. And like,
nice and subtle.
Yeah, exactly. Just give her a couple of kisses. She'll tell you everything. And like, we had a similar thing to that with, Danny Boy with Lucia Sciarra up against the mirror, and he's like macking out on her, and basically he's like, oh yeah, you know, so this organisation, where's the meeting, and so on, and like, obviously she tells him, and that's kind of cool, because we haven't had that, I don't think, for a little while.
And the nice one shot from that made me smile, a huge smile from ear to ear, was the way we just see the back of her dress being unzipped all the way down and it dropping down. It makes me immediately think of good old Madeline Smith in the opening scenes of Live and Let Die, Miss Caruso, when he's got his magnetic watch and stuff. Like, and that was always the shot, wasn't it? You'd just see the back of the dress being unzipped and then drop down for some nice nude lady back. And
we like that.
There it is. I was very happy with that shot. I really was.
Yeah, it was a good one. And afterwards, seeing her on the bed was pretty good one as well.
That was a delight, Chris. I absolutely am fully supportive of that particular shot. That was nice, yes.
So, well, speaking of clothing, it's quite interesting. What did you think of Danny Boy's clothes in this? Because there were quite a few nods to some of the styles that he wore. Obviously, the pre-titles, he's wearing that Tom Ford suit, which is basically Baron Samedi's outfit, which is quite cool. But that bit at the funeral where he goes to Marco Sciarra's funeral, and he's wearing the same jacket and black gloves, pretty much that Roger wears in Live and Let Die. Obviously, we know they're massive fans of Live and Let Die, but that's really cool. And there's something that I picked up when I watched it the other day, is that Bond and Oberhauser are wearing the same sunglasses, the exact same sunglasses. So when you see Oberhauser slightly turn his head, there's a little gold band on the corner, and that's exactly what Bond's got. So I was wondering, is that a link to say that they both, is that they both got the same decent sunglasses or whatever?
Maybe they wore the same goggles on the slopes back in the day. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is.
But yeah, that was quite a cool little touch. But yeah, what did you think of his outfit, for instance, in Austria? When he goes to see Madeleine Swann, that was kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's not up there with the Spy Who Loved Me banana suit. It's not. No. It's not as good as that. No. It's not as good as George's blue one piece either. But it's a solid skiing outfit, I guess. If you're in that sort of climb. And a bit unusual, like those weird sort of like goggle glasses that he kind of wears. Strange, that isn't unusual. I remember when I saw that still for the first time, I was like, "Huh, that's kind of weird." And I almost expected them to be like a Q branch thing, maybe. You know what I mean? But obviously they weren't. They were just a pair of sort of sunglass type things, I guess. But yeah, that was an unusual look for him, I must be honest.
Yeah, and he had the old socks pulled up over his trousers as well. That was you don't want to get them wet, do you, really? So,
I suppose not, no. Yeah. But I tell you what, I was a little bit disappointed with. That we never saw him wear the outfit that we saw in the teaser poster, the classic Live and Let Die, the black roll neck with the brown shoulder holster. I thought if that's in the teaser, I thought he's going to bring that out in the film, which I'd have been pleased with, but obviously not. Shame, that's weird, isn't it?
I wonder if he had worn it, what scene do you think he would have worn it in?
I suppose, okay, so Roger wears it when he's off on a mission. We know Pierce always likes to get his overalls on, doesn't he, at the end? He gets his overalls out. Roger would rack out the black trousers and the roll neck for the climax. So, you wouldn't really want to wear that in the sort of desert, would you? I suppose he would wear it when he goes to attack the CNS building.
That's it. And so while he's going around MI6, the old MI6 building, he'd have it on, wouldn't he? Yeah. That would have been quite cool, actually. Yeah. I guess he is wearing just all in black, isn't he? But it's not quite the same sort of thing, I don't think. But that was a shame. That would have been quite cool to see.
Would have been nice if he'd had a massive foot-long cigar in his mouth as well at the same time. That would have been a nice
and a Magnum.
Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. Also, something to be considered is that he didn't half drink a lot in this movie, didn't he?
Definitely. Well, when he went to see Madeleine Swann, she was, asking questions, what is your job sort of psychologically stressful? Do you exercise? And then the other thing was, how much alcohol do you drink? Too much. And he clearly did because, well, we saw him drink loads, didn't we, basically? He had, when he was in Lucia Sciarra's place, he had poured some champagne for them. They had dirty martinis on the train. Yeah. Do you know what makes a martini dirty, Tom?
I don't.
It's when a girl wears a really low-cut top and leans over when she's drinking it.
I like that. I'd be a big fan of dirty martinis. I'm going to order one of those next time. Yeah, very nice. Next time I'm in a bar, I'll make it dirty.
It's. I think it's just where they add olives or olive juice. That's all it is.
Is that what it is? Okay,
yeah.
Interesting.
I prefer the former.
There we go. I suppose it's somewhat shameful of me to not know what a dirty martini is, but I'm a bit of a lightweight. I'm not much of a drinker anyway, so there you go. Yeah. But yeah. So obviously, I think this is the first time we hear Daniel Craig order a vodka martini shaken, not stirred in that particular way. So there's that. That's a nice little
and he
little
didn't
touch.
Actually get it, though, did he?
He didn't. No, absolutely not.
It was protein shaken stirred.
He did indeed. But yeah, he's got a lot of booze on the go in this time. Obviously, in L'American, he's swigging on a beer and all that kind of stuff. So he's so there's a touch of your Fleming Bond for you. Yeah.
And he has a bottle of vodka beforehand that he finds down the back that he's swigging on that, isn't he? When Madeleine's on the vino. But funnily enough, at the end, then when he's not at the end, but when he's at Oberhauser's base, he gets offered the champagne and he's about to take it, and then he's like, maybe later. Now, do you think he refused that because he knew he was about to meet him and he wanted to have his wits about him? Do you think he thought it might be possibly drugged like it was in Dr. No, or do you just think, I don't know?
Well, that whole sequence is very Dr. No flavour, isn't it? Even down to Madeleine's outfit. Hugely, very Dr. No flavour. So that's interesting. Maybe that is a little sly nod. Because it's interesting, isn't it? When you think about when they wrote this script and the choices they make, does he shoot Blofeld or not at the end, for example? There's so many different avenues you could take things based on those simple actions. And you do wonder whether they had that conversation of, okay, so the guy comes out with a silver tray with the champagne, and okay, so they drink it. Does it drug them like they did in Doctor No? Do they wake up in their suites later? Does Blofeld come in and have a look at Bond underneath the sheets? Do you know what I mean? It's. I do wonder whether those conversations are had, and then you make that choice, because there's so many different variables of how you could play things. But,
I think they must do.
Yeah.
Imagine being a fly on the wall in the script sort of development stage. That'd be awesome,
wouldn't it be amazing? Though we would piss them off, because we'd be like, no, you don't want to do that. Do this. Write this line. Put that there. Yeah, interesting. It will be interesting to see if, as fans, we're all like armchair script writers and God knows what, aren't we? And it would be interesting to see if the reins were handed over to the fans in a different dimension to make a Bond film, whether they would actually be any good, or whether it would be the biggest pile of dog shit you'd ever seen.
Well, it wouldn't work for one reason, that the fans couldn't agree on the same thing, because we've already seen that with every single Bond film that comes out. You get sort of people that love it and people that don't. I think if you had a couple of people that shared a similar sort of vibe about Bond and had the same sort of, for instance, if you and I were obviously invited to Barbara and Michael's office and said, would you like to write the next Bond film? I think we would be able to do it without too much arguing and bitch slapping and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I don't know though. If you wanted him running around in a clown suit, I might have a few words about that.
Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, I'll take out that scene then. But
that's true. Yeah, maybe I'll get script writing for dummies, and I'll get started on that, and then maybe they'll hire us for Bond 25 or 6. You never know. You never know. So I suppose an interesting point of conversation is to think about, we're 4 films in now, Danny Boy.
Yeah.
Right. He's obviously around for the long haul. There's no way they're going to get rid of him after 4. He's got the co-producer credit. He is definitely coming back. It's already broken records left, right, and centre. Whether he does 1, whether he does 2, don't know. I feel like he's going to do 2. Let's take a look and compare Danny in his 4th film with the other actors' 4th films. So, for example, Sean Connery, Thunderball. You got Roger in Moonraker. You got Pierce in Die Another Day.
Yeah.
Let's just pause for a minute there, let that sink in. So what do you think? Do you think, like, for example, Thunderball is an undisputed classic, without a doubt. Yeah. Most people love that film. Some people say it gets a bit slow in the underwater scenes, but most people, generally speaking, love it and think it's a classic, which I thoroughly agree with. Moonraker is a bit of a split decision there, isn't it? It's a bit like, not sure about that one. How do people feel about Die Another Day?
I think the majority love it. There's only one person I know that doesn't.
So go on then. What do you think? Daniel's 4th movie versus the other ones.
Okay, so I think, Thunderball. Okay, look at where Connery was. Thunderball was the biggest height of Bond phenomenon, wasn't it, in the 60s? That was where Bond was at its peak in terms of Connery and the film. And it only got bigger and bigger up until that point. And then, although the films might have got bigger, it kind of slipped a little bit thereafter. Not hugely initially, but, eventually. So I think Thunderball's a real strong stalwart for Connery. Although, like you said, some people don't like it, mainly because of the length of the underwater scenes and stuff. But there we are. Moonraker, you do get people that love it. You definitely do. But you also, I think the overwhelming majority say it's a bit too far, a bit too silly, a bit too fantastical. So not bad. If you're a bit stressed and you want to watch something which makes you laugh, if you want to see a pigeon do a double take, or someone get wine poured over them, or a hovercraft appear out of a gondola, then you watch Moonraker. Now, Die Another Day is a bit of a sore point, isn't it? That's something that we all get around to eventually discuss. And it's not as bad as you think, but to finish on that is a bit of a shame, really, for Pierce.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, okay, here's another way to look at it. So rather than looking at the 4th film, let's look at it how they went from the 1st to the 4th. Okay. So Connery, his first 4 are all amazing, all super strong, and they kind of got not better, but potentially maybe not even stronger. I don't know, but you know what I mean. Those 4 are just rock solid, pretty much.
Yeah.
Doctor No through the Thunderball, rock solid. If you look at Rog, it kind of like the first. It's again like his character like his Bond sort of genres, there's a bit of a roller coaster to it. You know, Live and Let Die, I think was quite solid. Man with Golden Gun, not bad. Spy up again. Moonraker slightly down again. So it was a bit bit like a wave. But Pierce's, you would have to say, for the majority of people, it was a bit of a sliding scale.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Now, if we look at the four of Daniels, I mean, everyone's got a different opinion. Not many people dislike Casino. I think, ultimately, I mean, obviously it came first in that Times sort of thing that we did. So that's going to be a solid you know, that is a solid Bond film, no matter what the majority of people think. That people love that film, so that's got to be up there. Now, Quantum, you know, that's had a lot of naysayers. Obviously, it's improved in our viewpoint and with a few others, but it was definitely a dip down. Skyfall, it's strange because I think that does split people. I really think it does. I know a lot of people absolutely love it, but a lot of people are a bit like you and I that think it's a bit of a medium film rather than sort of top 5 or anything like that. But then for us, Spectre's gone right back up there. So it's almost bookended the first and the fourth with Danny Boy as his best films. But again, it's just everyone's different, so it's so hard to sort of...
It is hard to say that, isn't it? I think, for me, Casino is my favourite Daniel film, without a doubt. I think, I mean, to me, that film is just untouchable in the way that was done. And again, seeing some original Fleming material in there is always going to have that feeling deep down. You know, it's always lovely to see original Fleming up on the screen there. Spectre, I think is my favourite performance from Daniel as Bond. I think he's just more comfortable in it. He's more confident, and he just, you know, he rocks the humour, which I don't think he's been able to do that well in the past. You know, he's got a few intense scenes in there, you know, and I love that moment when Madeline says to him about, oh, who, you know, your parents both dead, who brought you up? And the way he just sort of brushes off, you know, someone else and just brushes it off. There's a little hints of stuff in that film. But at the end of the day, I think, again, just bringing it back around to the critics, I think why they're sort of whining about this film is that there's been, you know, in Casino, there was the sort of dark journey of Vesper dying and him dealing with that. In Skyfall, it was exploring his family's past and going back to his family home, and then M dying at the end, very emotional and all that kind of stuff. And this one doesn't really have that. You've got obviously the big reveal and stuff, but this is a Bond who's not going to stand there sort of brooding over the past. He's just going to like get the job done and take care of business. And I think, you know, that's why Bond's never going to win an Oscar, because you know, a Bond film is never going to win an Oscar because it's like, oh, there's not an emotional journey. It's like, well, fuck off. We've had an emotional journey for the last 3 films. I've had enough of emotional journeys. Let's not bring up his parents again, because it's just been, you know, let's just put that to one side for a minute. None of the other movies really mentioned his parents at all. You know, none of Connery's movies or anything like that. And it's just like, why not have some classic Bond? You know, why do we have to explore that stuff? Why can't we see him fucking in a parachute ejecting out of his car and landing amazingly? Love it. Brilliant. Why can't we do all these things? We bloody can, and Spectre's brilliant. Fuck off.
You're getting all defensive, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
No, it is. I mean, it's awesome. Obviously, I think you mean like what, an Oscar for Best Picture, you mean? Hey?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not that. Bonds were never meant to be that way. The thing is, okay, so let's say 2 years time, 3 years time, they're saying, right, we're going to do another. Danny Boy signed up no matter what. Puts in the call to Mendes. Look, I know it's another 8 months of your life, but come on, you know, it's you and me, bro, you and me. And Mendes like, yeah, man.
Mendes is coming back, man. He's coming back.
Of course he will. Of course he will. So they're at that stage, right, where they're ready to do Bond 25. Now, do you think, in terms of an emotional story arc, because obviously Mendes, that's what attracts him. He does like, you know, do that. And it is great to a certain extent, you know. So do you think there's a balance they can get where there's a bit of that sort of storyline going on? Do you think Spectre had that balance, or do you think it just sort of ignored that side of things completely?
I feel like it was definitely there because obviously there is the link back to his childhood with, Hans Oberhauser, who, somewhat of a father figure to him and all that kind of business. It's definitely there. I just think the critics would want to see Daniel sitting in a dark room looking forlorn for 5 minutes and then somebody coming and saying, oh, was it tough growing up without your parents, James, and him going, oh, and changing the subject. And we didn't get that, we just had a little hint of it, who else brought you up then? Someone else, and he brushes it apart, which is what Bond would do. Would you ever see Connery sitting there going, oh, my mum and dad died? No, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what this journey has been, is him becoming Bond, and he finally is there, and we've got the James Bond we've always known on screen in Spectre. So I don't feel like, it's nice to explore that sometimes and nice to not really explore it other times. It's for me, it's one or the other. I don't really care either way, you know what I mean? And if they do it next, I've got a theory about the next two movies which I'm saving for another episode. I'm not going to bring it up yet, but I think potentially there could be one motherfucker of a emotional arc in the next two films. That's what I've got in the back of my mind, which we will talk about in another podcast. But there's a little teaser for you listeners. Yeah, absolutely.
You got me intrigued. I want to find out.
But yeah, so that's my thoughts. What do you think?
What about where the Danny Boy character is going to go?
Or in terms of that emotional arc, do you need that stuff going on? Do you feel like it was in Spectre, for example?
Well, basically, I didn't. Whatever might have potentially not been in Spectre, I didn't find it lacking in any respect whatsoever. I thought it hit all the right notes. In terms of, obviously the torture scene, it wasn't as dark as the Casino Royale one, but it was still, it's still painful. It made you wince in terms of when you're watching it. It was still pretty, even though it was, light in terms of its location, it was still dark in terms of what was going on. And for me, that is definitely part of that whole side of it, the darker sort of side of it.
Talking about the torture scene for a second, the torture scene in Casino was still funny. You know what I mean? That was like one of the biggest laughs in the movie. It was like, you died scratching my balls, to the left, to the right, and all that kind of stuff, It wasn't like that was, obviously I just got to hold my balls for a second in memory of that scene. But obviously that was a horrible torture scene, but it was done in an amusing way. And it's the same with this one. Obviously he's drilling into his face. And he's sort of, I love that scene actually when Madeline runs over to him and Blofeld said that he won't even recognise you kind of stuff, the kind of thing. And he sort of opens his eyes all groggy and it's like, I'd recognise you anywhere. I love that moment, man. I think that was a brilliant little moment. But yeah, sorry, I hijacked you. Go on, carry on. What were you saying?
No, it's all right. So for me, I don't think say Bond 25 was another Spectre in terms of we didn't go into we didn't have a big emotional arc or anything like that. We didn't have moody Bond again, a broody Bond. That would be interesting. Yeah. Then, I would be fine with that. I think like you, I don't want to see that happening every time. I want a change, and Spectre's been a change, and for me, a welcome change, for 100% welcome change. Yeah. So I'd like to see a couple of more classic ones. Shake up the formula again. Let's do something else in Bond 26, 27, I hopefully it'll be a trilogy and then they'll just do something completely different again, but we'll see.
At the end of the day, you look at Majesties and that is one of the darkest endings, but probably the darkest ending in the whole series. But that is, up until that point, a light-hearted Bond film, isn't it? You know what I mean? Yeah. You got Bond in a kilt, boning loads of different women and talking in a silly voice all the time. There's a Hilary Bray and slight stiffness going on and all that kind of stuff. Yet nobody's complaining about that. Well, some people complain about it, but certainly not us. But do you know what I mean? I don't think that's sort of those things are exclusive of one or the other. I think you can have the light-hearted classic Bond, and then you can have a bit of darkness in there at the same time. I don't think it has to be one or the other. And that is part of my theory of Bond 25 and 6, which I'm going to, as I say, save for another podcast. Not telling you what it is yet because it's too exciting. It deserves its own episode.
Can you tell me when we turn off the mic?
Yeah, all right, I'll tell you.
Yay! Cheers, man.
You can be my mole. There it is. Cool. So I think that about rounds out today's episode, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to say that obviously we haven't sort of talked about the film, the scenes in the film specifically with Daniel, because what we're going to do is we've got a couple more character ones which we might go through, and then we're going to look at specific scenes like we did with the pre-titles, but we're going to be looking at specific scenes and Bond's interaction with the people within those scenes. So we'll be talking a lot more about Bond within the film of Spectre in coming episodes. But this one was more of a, you know, just to see what we think of Daniel Craig's Bond, where it is in its present time, how it compares to the other ones, and just to get a bit of an overview of it, really, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Hopefully that came across.
And there is a service I've heard of. If somebody upsets you, you can send off online to order a box of shit that you can post to somebody through the post. So they open it up and they're like, oh my God. So if anyone wants to send one to the dude that wrote the Forbes article, I thoroughly would welcome it, and it would amuse me a lot if that happened. I might even do it myself, but there we go.
Imagine if that was your business and you had to supply.
I heard it's very successful.
What would your diet consist of?
Yeah. Well, I hope on this occasion it would be curries and all sorts of stinky nonsense. Anyway, right, I've got that off my chest now. Ignore the US reviews. They're nonsense. Listen to JBR. Don't turn off. There we go. All right. That's been day 7 of 30 Days of Spectre. We will be back tomorrow as per usual. I've been Tom Sears.
I have been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return first thing tomorrow.
See you then, everyone. Bye. Bye.